And welcome everyone to EVTN News. I'm just going to jump right into the news today, and so let's get started. The Charlotte SSPX Chapel is raising money, and as you know, Bishop Martin has heavily cracked down on uh, Latin Mass options at Charlotte, and this actually benefits the SSPX tremendously because the people who run the Twitter page for the Charlotte SSPX said, "Big news for St. Anthony's. The SSPX has approved us to begin seeking land for the new St. Anthony's. God is powerfully at work in Charlotte. Faith, families, and devotion are exploding. Pray with us as we take this next step and come experience the fullness of the Catholic life in the Carolinas." So that is one option, and from what I could see, the the current chapel looks very small. It's nice, but it looks very small. But it's also on the very far outskirts of Charlotte. So if they could get something maybe closer to the city, that might be helpful for more people. So we'll see what they're able to do, but it seems like the reign of terror of Bishop Martin isn't going to end anytime soon. So this is something that needs to be done. Okay. Swiss bishops last Monday published new guidelines outlining how they intend to handle the employment and relationship of priests, deacons, and lay pastoral workers. They declare their acceptance of current lived realities and irregularities of clergy and church employees without explicitly naming what that includes, though the implications are obvious: cohabitation, adultery, or LMNOP. The bishops write, "The teaching of Pope Francis has emphasized that people in partnerships and family forms that do not conform to Catholic tradition and doctrine embody values that deserve respect and recognition. The path of the church is the path of mercy and inclusion." So basically disregard their lifestyles and include them. There's no problem. Every person's reality is unique. And according to the gospel, one can act justly only if one considers this in its entirety. While clergy are recognized as public figures, the bishops insist they have a right to privacy and to a private life. They want to. They want. Okay. They want employments in such a way that both church guidelines and the private lives and privacy of pastoral workers are respected. Supervisors should be expected to act in such a way that nothing needs to be concealed, so they can be open about their rejection of church teaching, and there's no problem. They should be commended for it. I guess that's what that's what the bishops. If the bishops have their way in Switzerland, that's what's going to happen. So, very unfortunate, but not necessarily surprising. Okay. According to a report published November 17th during the second session of the Synod on Synodality in October 24, Pope Francis reactivated the work of a papal commission on the female diaconate first created in 2020. The interim report on the group's progress, published ahead of full reports which are due at the end of the year, was signed by Father Armando Mateo, Secretary of the Doctrinal Section of the Dicastery of Doctrine of Faith, which is overseeing the highly watched expert panel. Mateo confirmed to CNA that the Synod is no longer examining a possible female diaconate, and so they're not examining it, and the question is in the hands of the now revived 2020 Commission, whose members respond to the Holy Father. So the Vatican has created another commission of women on women deacons. While not considering women deacons, the Synodal Study Group on Church Ministries is drafting a report on the participation of women in the life and leadership of the Church, including the personal accounts of women in church leadership, theological perspectives on men's and women's roles, and the contributions of Pope Leo and Pope Francis on this topic. So nothing about any of the other popes? I guess not, because that's all that this current Vatican is about. Francis, and living in the nostalgia of Francis, at least their nostalgia. For us, it's kind of more of a nightmare. But another group focused on church law is also discussing what roles women and the laity in general can hold in particular church offices, including liturgical functions and in church tribunals. What roles women can, including liturgical functions. So what liturgical functions? Women can liturgical functions women can fulfill. That's very concerning, actually. Very concerning. An update from the so-called expert panel on controversial doctrinal, pastoral, and ethical issues said its final document will clarify the current paradigm shift in the Church following the Second Vatican Council and the emerging synodal experience. It will include procedural proposals for the paradigm shift, such as how to conduct conversation in the Spirit and how to manage cognitive, emotional, and cultural resistance to the shift. So basically how to infiltrate the Church with modernist secular values, and no one actually cares how to conduct the conversation with the Spirit. So in the Spirit, yeah, that's no one actually thinks that's legit. Another potentially fraught topic being examined by the study group on ecumenical practices is intercommunion. Okay, so this, lots of red flags here. Intercommunion, also known as Eucharistic hospitality, the idea to allow the reception of Holy Communion to people in non-Catholic Christian denominations. So I believe that, well, I don't want to say this, but if you're talking about the Orthodox, that's a lot different than talking about like Lutherans or non-denominational fundamentalist Protestants. But the whole idea of this topic is very modernist. The topic is tied to ecumenism, of course, the relationship between Christian churches, and is especially relevant in couples and families. Well, it's not. Okay. I'm reading the article here. Especially relevant in couples and families with members of both Catholic and non-Catholic Christian faiths. And one easy solution to that is for the person that is not a member of the church to convert to the Catholic faith, and then they will be able to receive the sacraments. Very simple solution, but not something that this study group seems to consider, which again shows you that it's completely compromised. Other questions the group intends to study is the increased participation of all baptized Catholics in the liturgy, liturgical formation, the role of women in the history of salvation, the reinterpretation of liturgical preaching in a synodal perspective, and the healthy decentralization of liturgical authority, also with a view to the enculturation of the rites. Well, okay, so I have, I come from European descent, and it is my cultural heritage. Latin Mass is my cultural heritage, and so I want that. I want the liturgy to be enculturated to fit with my heritage, and so I'd like the Latin Mass. So I guess I'll ask my bishop about that and see what he thinks. What about this synodal study group? Are they gonna? What do they think about enculturating the liturgy to align it with my European heritage and my historical values? Historical values of my heritage. Okay, and then Of course, the participation of all baptized Catholics in the liturgy, well, that's already been going on for thousands of years if you haven't noticed. But maybe it's get with the times. Okay. So there's nothing good on that. That was kind of a long-winded explanation, but that's, yeah, really concerning. And even more concerning is, I believe on Tuesday, Kissy Fernandez will release a document on polygamy, or, well, maybe marriage, like real marriage, like between a man and a woman. I think what they've been trending towards is saying something along the lines of, well, traditional marriage isn't ideal, but we must accompany pastorally people in irregular relationships, whether that be polygamy or two men or two women or multiple people or people that are living in invalid marriages due to divorce and remarriage. And they'll say, well, I expect this to be potentially comparable to Amoris Laetitia, where they allowed adulterers to receive communion. But I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens on Tuesday. A press release was issued by one of the alleged, this is a big one, one of the alleged victims of abuse in Chiclayo, Peru, by a priest who implicates the then Bishop Prevost, now Pope Leo. So, the victim writes, on November 13th, 2025, the Church informed us in writing that the Pope has granted the dispensation from the clerical state to the priests from Chiclayo, Eleuterio Vasquez Gonzalez, who abused us when we were children. This decision means that the facts we reported, which were never even minimally investigated by the Church, now remain definitively unresolved. Similar to the McCarrick situation. In a meeting on April 23rd, 2025, the dispensation was presented to us as something positive. Oh, that was in April. Okay. The dispensation was presented to us as something positive, taking advantage of the fact that we were not assisted by a canon lawyer. But victims of abuse, as well as the institutions that are meant to protect them, know that reparation can only be built upon truth without tricks or deception. Avoiding investigations and closing cases through dispensations that prevent a canonical penal trial is a path that should never be taken, because it leaves unprotected those who have the courage to speak out and seek light amid their pain, something extremely difficult and personally exhausting. For this reason, we announce the initiation of legal actions before the competent canonical authorities against all ecclesiastical officials who participated in or were responsible for these acts of negligence. So this was an abuse case that Pope Leo handled. Seems as though it was very poorly handled. And when he was Prevost Bishop of Chiclayo, Peru. And it seems as though it was quickly swept under the rug, and the similar actions were taken to the McCarrick case, where the evidence was never presented and McCarrick was simply laicized in this case, in this priest. But it's going to be a black mark on Pope Leo's resume until the facts are reported and all of the information shows that Pope Leo did the right thing, if he did. But if he didn't, then this is going to be hanging over his head forever. So there's that. Okay. And if any of you are from the United States, happy Thanksgiving this week. I know it's a secular holiday, but we'll have Thanksgiving and then Advent begins very quickly after that. So use the Advent season to prepare yourself for Christmas. And tune in next week. Until next time, thank you so much for watching. We are the laity, and we will not be silent.